Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where it's about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about episode 5 of Sweet Tooth. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I thought that opening was interesting because we're catching up with Gladys, and obviously that whole conversation about, time kind of finding a way to catch up to you. And so Gladys, the General Abbott shows up. So it turns out all the research, all that she was doing was for him. So it wasn't necessarily like she was necessarily working on a cure just for her sake, which I guess at the end of the day, Dr. Singh didn't know that. Maybe he did. I don't know. I guess it's kind of like, oh, she's just a doctor doing her thing. But I guess when you kind of recognize, like, there's a bit of a military presence there. Also, for like the last man to be delivering stuff to you like that, you had to have some kind of special hookup or setup. But it turns out Abbott didn't appreciate the fact is it's like, oh, you faked being sick, and it's like, oh snap. So that's why she disappeared afterwards, because this was supposed to be her out. She's like, all right, I don't have to worry about it anymore because Abbott got here as a replacement. Boom, I'm going. But it's like, no. You're supposed to stay working with me until you find the cure or do whatever you need. Because he basically talks about there's two different people in the world. The type of people who basically sit back and watch the people that this monstrous virus kill everyone that they love and know. And then there's other people like me, soldiers, who do everything it takes to get rid of this. And it's like, which one do you think I am? Which one are you? Because she calls him a monster. So it seems like all this stuff of like killing hybrids, it's not something she wanted to do, because she's the one that's like, at the end of the day, you can try and do whatever you want to, but they're going to be here long after we're gone. So I'm assuming like she was kind of reluctant. It's kind of like he kind of forced her, so it's like, hey, you either do this or you're dead type of thing. So I mean, maybe there's a scientific aspect of, right, it is kind of messed up because it's like you push Dr. Singh into doing all of this without him knowing the full details on like what he was kind of ultimately mixed up in. So it's kind of messed up, but I guess she thought like she could get far enough away, but it seems like nah, with his resources and everything, it's like you can never run away from him. Like once you're under his thumb, you're under his thumb, so he has a eye on you. But what was interesting though is he pulls out a syringe, very much like Gus's Papa did in the first episode when he was going after that guy. So there's some connection there in some shape or form. I don't know whether that's like a more like syringe version of the virus, or is it something worse? I don't know. Once again, because his Papa came back without it, so it's like, once again, we don't know whether that guy stuck him and that's why he got sick, or whether he sucked the dude and just something happened and he got infected, and we don't know. All we heard was Gladys screaming, so we still don't know what that syringe full of stuff does. I'm assuming it makes sense, but we don't know. But obviously he now knows about singing. It's like, all right, let me go check on your assistant because he has the book, which that's a whole thing. Like, obviously, Addie's dealing with the fact that those flowers are growing all over his place, which maybe that's supposed to be a sign. The fact is, it's getting worse and worse. But it's like, oh, Bob comes over. It's like, yeah, there's missing posters. And he's like, oh, maybe Nancy will be back. It's like, ironically. At first, I was wondering. I was like, oh, because later on, they both leave the house. I'm like, you're going to leave the house? Don't you have a body in your house? Oh, you actually hid it at the clinic in the freezer. That was interesting. But obviously, after everything, it's like, Audie's feeling guilty. He's like, oh, like, we didn't do anything, so we pretty much killed her. It's like, did you kill her? No. Did I kill her? No, you didn't. It's like, right, if you want to take it out with anybody, take it out with Trixie. She's the one that actually killed Nancy. So now it's them trying to decide what they're going to do, because Rainey doesn't look good. Things are kind of, it's like this is the longest she's gone without a treatment. So, but obviously word got in that, oh, the shipment came. It's like, oh, good. All right, let's get on this, immediately. Once again, those reservations he had are gone now, because it's like, right, I need to cure my wife as soon as possible, not only for her sake, but just our sake in general, because like the better she is, the less likely the neighbors are to burn us alive. So they get there, but sadly there's no hybrids. They haven't been able to catch any recent hybrids. It makes sense, considering a good chunk of them are just in hiding, and some are probably heading to the preserve. So there's that angle with things. But also, I would assume that's the main reason why. Because we never get the full scale of the preserve of how many are there. We get a few names here and there, but we don't know like the total of like how many actually have made their way to the preserve. It might not be as big as we think, or maybe it is as big as we think, because it was built over the course of a couple years. So I'm curious. But when it's all said and done, though, they also find out, like, wait, why is there water leaking from the freezer? And I was like, oh, did somebody? I was like, what's up? Because I was like, Samantha's not here. I was like, oh, did like General Abbott get here before you or something? And then it's like, oh, good, that the body's still here. It's like, oh, so that's, and I was like, oh, so that's where you hid Nancy's body. But it's like, did you lock the door? He's like, yeah, I was sure. But then it's like, well, it's unlocked. He's like, I think I did. So it's like, but if Samantha came here, we got to get out. I wonder, did she just like not like just go to investigate? Did he actually forget to lock it or something? Or did she need something from there? I'm assuming he legitimately was probably so caught up in everything, probably worried, probably hasn't been sleeping well. So he probably was not really thinking clearly and probably was in a hurry and didn't realize he hadn't locked it. But Samantha came back with the entire community, which Audie did his best to swing that. But no. She was, all right, you're right, I lied to you. She was sick. Well, why didn't you tell her? Well, the fact of the matter is the hypocrisy. Do you know how? And it's like, because I was wondering whether Doug or what's his name, Hanson, were the first. It's like, no, they've been doing this for a while. I mean, to be fair, we know that like Doug was actually the third incident, so it was Hanson, and then there was someone before him, but there might have been even more before then. But it's like they were like, for him, he was calling them out because it's like, right, like the fact is, look at what we have. Like we built this neighborhood and stuff like that to kind of keep everything out, but look what we became in the process. We become monsters ourselves. But then Rainey starts coughing and it's like, oh boy. So they get taken back to the house and strapped to the chairs and had the place set on fire. And as you know, the fire is spreading, you know, Audie's apologizing because for him, he's like, I'm sorry, I was working at the hospital so much, I brought it back to you. She's like, no. The fact, because if that was the case, for one, wouldn't you be sick as well? That doesn't make any sense. But it's like, for his wife, it's like, no, you didn't. Remember that kid at the pool party or whatever? He was sneezing on me so many times, because that kind of adds to why Audie's been like, I mean, for one, it's first and foremost, it's regardless of anything, he's trying to save his wife. So that comes first and foremost. But he's also so dedicated because he also blames himself, because it's like, I'm your husband, I'm supposed to protect you, I love you so much, and I failed to protect you. And she's like, no, you did everything you could, and you know, and at least if they're going out, at least they're going out together. I was like, oh boy. But luckily Abbott shows up in time. We hear some firing, and it's like, yeah, if you don't want to get got, you guys are going to scatter. So I wonder, did they actually kill some of those people? And it's like, oh, I think that's irony behind it. But Abbott shows up, and it's like, oh, you're Dr. Singh. So I'm wondering, is he going to be he's probably going to be willing to give. He might let Rainey stay alive just because it's like, right, that's extra motivation for you to do what you got to do and continue working with me. Obviously, we saw what happened when the last person that was under his thumbs kind of went from underneath his thumb. He didn't appreciate that and once again killed her, or maybe something worse, or a combination. The fact is, it's like, we see what happens. He doesn't appreciate people turning on him. So, but it's also like, he might be willing to give him a chance. It's like, no. Like, the fact is that you're willing to, like, you're working on a cure and everything. Like, you know, maybe she could be the test subject and all that anyway. So, extra reason to keep her alive. But, yeah. Now that he's kind of in the general's favor, it's like no one in the neighborhood's going to mess with him anyway. So, found themselves, you know, and as the narrator's kind of saying, like, yeah, just as, you know, time has a funny way of just kind of making things happen at just the right time, you know. So, we'll have to wait and see where things kind of go on that front. Another side of things is at the preserve. Obviously, despite opening things up, Amy, which I've been meaning to bring this up ever since Amy got introduced, which was like episode 2. I just keep forgetting to bring it up. The actress who plays, if I'm not mistaken, the actress who plays Amy is the actress who plays Cinderella in, well, just Ella, but Cinderella in Once Upon a Time season 7. She was kind of like the other reality version of her, yeah. Well, sadly, what ended up being the 7th and final season, sadly, at the end of the day. But, regardless, I was like, hey, I think there's some other stuff. That's the most recent thing I think I know her from, but I think there was something else I do know her from. I just can't quite remember. Can't remember looking at her IMDb, and I'm like, it's familiar. She's familiar from something else, but I don't remember what it was I knew her from besides Once Upon a Time. Regardless, I've been sitting on that like for the past 3-4 episodes, and I just kept forgetting every time to bring it up. But regardless, tangents and all that aside, I thought it was but the fact is that she's still trying to keep things safe. That regardless, like when people are like, hey, we got this baby possum hybrid, it's like, right, leave it this particular place, we'll come get it. He's like, no, this baby in trouble. Like, just tell us where you are. It's like, you can't trust anyone nowadays. So it's like, there's no guarantee that this person is going to be who they claim they are. So obviously for her, it's like, you know, regardless of the situation, it's not just, you know, protecting her daughter either. Wendy, which I don't think they brought her name up last episode, but we found out her name is Wendy, which I was like, oh, that's interesting. Because I made reference to like some of the I made like Peter Pan references with like the animal army that, you know, it's like, oh, for her name to be Wendy is interesting. I meant to also bring this up. It seems like they might be doing a little bit of I'm curious how they go, like, be kind of like His Dark Materials. It's kind of spoilerish, but not really. There's like two different stories kind of coming together in certain regard. I mean, this is kind of like a lot of plot threads are like slowly like heading in the same direction. But I'm wondering if everything with like the preserve, in particular with Wendy and Gus, because they seem like a very special kind of hybrid amongst hybrids in general. Because as we've seen, most hybrids seem to be the more animalistic. Because that was something I brought up at the beginning, where like most hybrids, like a 75-25, in the sense that they're 75% animal, 25% human. But, you know, Wendy and Gus are the special case of they're 25% animal and 75% human kind of situation. I don't know. The fact is that that's the case is significant. Which actually plays an interesting role in the episode too, because Wendy feels a bit of an outsider, even amongst other hybrids, because the others are more animalistic than she is, you know. And it's like, well, I don't kind of fit in with them, and I also don't fit in with the humans. Which for her mom is like, thank God, that's a good thing. Like the fact is, because humans can kind of suck, you know. Because she herself never fit in. She's like, not until she found the zoo and eventually, you know, started raising Wendy here. It's like, and found Wendy and started raising her here, that she kind of found herself. And it's like, but how do I find myself? It's like, by realizing that there's nothing wrong with you, that you are absolutely perfect the way you are, you know? So I just thought that was such an interesting development. But she's also got like Bobby working on something else. And it turns out he finds a ribbon, and it turns out like the fence has been marked. So the last men have found them, much like, you know, Gus's circumstances. So they did talk about it, interestingly enough, that they did find, that this has happened over the course of a few years. So I'm wondering, are they kind of like fudging it a little bit? Like maybe she was like, let's say like 9 before and she's now 12, but it's like she kind of looks a little the same. Like maybe they're kind of fudging that a little bit. I'm curious. Because once again, the time frame is just all, but he made it clear. The narrator was like, yeah, it took a couple years. So, like, you know, like I said, 2 or 3 years potentially to kind of get it all set up, you know, to be what it is. But once again, how they managed to, like, how she managed to get it to, like, I guess, like, if you pay someone, they'll drop flyers for you and stuff like that. Like, you just probably have to have, like, the necessary compensation for it. But it's just, like, it's, I don't know, it still seems like a small-scale operation. So to have that type of advertisement is just kind of interesting to me. So regardless, there's that whole situation. So then we circle back to Gus and Tommy escaping. And it's like, oh, everything, you know, it's like, oh my God, that was so great. We like got away. It's like we got away from like the bad guys and stuff like that. It's like, cool. And obviously, you know, Tommy made it clear. He's like, all right, let's go to Colorado. He's like, you're for real? He's like, yeah. And he's like, come on, don't get too excited about it and stuff like that, kid. So ultimately, they're continuing their journey. And lo and behold, who do they run into? None other than Bear. It's like, she's willing to help out. She's got dug up some information about, because I forgot to talk about that last episode, which also shows you how vast their network is. Because interestingly enough, like the internet's down, but they still have access to certain things. Because I got brought up in the first episode. Like, yeah, the internet's down. Maybe it's not as down, or maybe they just have those type of connections. The fact is that they were able to find stuff out about Birdie. And gave it an address, and there's a train going to Colorado. It's like they missed a train and everything, but still. So, like, you know, Gus pleading, please, can we go with Bear? And it's like, all right, fine. But you follow my lead. She's like, sure. She keeps walking. He's like, wait, you're supposed to follow? He's like, damn it. And obviously I love that being a thing, that, like, both him and Bear butt heads a lot, because I think to a certain extent he's trying to be a little bit more optimistic, as he wants to try and keep Gus innocent. They both do, but she wants Gus to be prepared that, like, the world isn't what you think it is, even going as far as saying, like, right, people, like, you know, we kind of have our expectations of people and they might not live up to it, because she doesn't want him to get too excited about, like, oh, my mom, she's got to be, you know, she doesn't have horns, but obviously she's going to be a great person, obviously, and she's probably looking for me too, just like I'm looking for her. So she's trying to like lower his expectations so he doesn't end up getting his heart broken. Because I think for her, she's been disappointed time and time again by people, in particular grown-ups. She's come to realize like grown-ups will let you down all the time, you know. So I think that lends more into why. I mean, to be fair, him being a last man previously, like of course, like she's always going to be a little like, I don't know when it comes to Tommy. But I think also like, it's just in general she doesn't trust adults because they've failed this world time and time again, and especially someone like him who's come after hybrids like Gus and everything. So constant butting heads. They find a parachute. I wonder, is that guy related to anything? Because like they really, I mean, he's just a guy that was in a parachute. But I guess it, you know, I mean, he was, since he's nothing but skeletons, he's been there a long time. But it's like, you know, obviously the optimism of like, oh my God, Gus, yeah, people used to like fly out of this, you know, jump out of planes and they kind of glide them down. And Gus is like, oh, you're pulling my arm. He's like, leg and no. People, yeah, used to do it for fun. But then, like, you know, Bear has to kind of be the pessimist, more so realist than anything, being like, but they also used it for war. And it's like, but then they turn around and they see a dead guy who had jumped out, and it's like, oh, you guys are just messing with me. And they're both like, yep, you're right, just so Gus wouldn't see. They want to keep that innocence of him alive, even to the point, you know, not Birdie, but Bear's asking, like, you know, well, first and foremost, it's like, you know, he's asking like where she's going to go after this, and she's kind of like, I don't know, somewhere. And it's like, what about you? Why are you helping out Gus for him? He's like, I've got my reasons. But the fact is, that kid, you know, I don't know where he's getting it from, but he has that whole bunch of optimism, and I just don't want that to kind of be, you know, because they've both grown up jaded in this world. Because there was even that point when they found the bridge and stuff like that. That was kind of cute. It's like, oh, he's like, oh, this is where trains go by? And she's like, no, this is cars used to drive by. He's like, oh, I'm surprised you know what a car is. And she's like, shut it. But it's just the arguing back and forth. They end up coming across the field of those flowers that are supposed to be bad omens for the sick. No, everyone's scared of them, so no one ever gets close enough, because no one knows like whether or not the flowers themselves could actually make you sick or not. No one knows anything about it, just that they're an omen for the sick. So it's like we have to go through it, but obviously it's like, well, there's also like a bridge, but Tommy's like, nah, it won't support our way. She's like, you mean it won't support your way? So they have this back and forth. For her, she just doesn't believe that Tommy has the best of intentions, because it's like, all you do is care about yourself. Like, but obviously for him, it is a thing of, I think he hasn't gotten to this point of explaining it to her, but I do believe his reason for helping out Gus is redemption. He wants to make up for all the terrible things he's done, especially he wants that kid to be reunited with his family. But even, for her, it's like, I lost my entire family. That was my family. I lost it all because of you. The fact is that you don't even realize that, but Gus goes across the bridge. He wants them to kind of cooperate instead of be at each other's throats. But before they could get to Gus, he ends up falling through and landing in the flowers below and passing out. Some dust kicks up, and he doesn't get sick, but rather he kind of goes through a bit of a dream sequence. Now the thing is that happening just because he's a hybrid? Because the hybrids don't get sick. They can't be contagious with the sick either, but it's like, maybe it has or once again, we don't even know if those flowers actually make people sick. Maybe that's just your general thing, like maybe they make you hallucinate or something. Maybe there's something, but it didn't just seem like a hallucination. It did seem like some kind of dream sequence, and obviously it led to him reuniting with his Pubba, and for him it's like, you know, I broke your rule and everything. He's like, it's okay. He's like, I knew sooner or later that you would you know, go out there. It's like, I just want you to stay the way I remembered you. Then also it's like, right, I went with someone who isn't who was one of those people you warned me about, but he's not all bad. He's actually doing good if you have to find him. And I'm also with the bear, and it's like, oh, there's a bear too. But it's like, but he's also proud of his son, because, like, right, you've learned that humans are complicated, which I'm sure that applies to him as well. That there's complicated circumstances to his situation as well. But his dad's telling him that, you know, he needs to, like, that it's like, you're ready. That basically the world is ready to meet you. Like, because, like, there's a whole bunch of hybrid kids out there. It seems like his dad's positioning him or telling him that basically you're going to be the leader. You're going to be the one that kind of revolutionizes everything for, like, the hybrids. So you're kind of the one that's going to change everything, but you have to go saying he's coming. And he obviously, to get his Papa back, Gus is banging on the mirror and it cracks, and he sees General Abbott, and in a reflection he sees this fire in his goggles, and he's like, "Oh, I've once wanted to meet you, Gus." Which, when we meet Abbott at the end of this episode, when he's saving Audie and Rainey, it's like, oh, he like the fire from there is reflecting in his eyes, so it's like it was very foreshadowing. Because I'm guessing that means eventually those two are going to cross paths, Gus and Abbott. I guess like maybe at that point word is going to get out about Gus, and he's eventually going to track Gus and them down. But luckily, Tommy and Bear were able to get, like, obviously going back, getting the parachute, the helmet from the dude. They were able to grab him and grab Gus and get him out the field. But he wakes up, and they're still arguing back and forth. It's like, well, you wanted the helmet. No, because you wanted the parachute. And they're like, ball up your fist, make a fist, and bump him. And it's like, because, it's kind of a cute thing that Tommy told him earlier. And it's like, all right, they both reluctantly fist bump. And, Gus kind of leads the charge. He's like, right, I'm not afraid. Let's go. He's kind of even more sure of his mission now. Because his dad was telling him it's not about you and me anymore. It's about all those hybrid kids you're going to help. So they go to the train track, So things are going forward. Once again, whether that was just like his subconscious, whether there really was something to it, like, well, the sick kills, and maybe these things are kind of like not necessarily a dream thing, but kind of a connector, because it, like, his Pubba was there, but it was like, right, here's an hourglass thing, and we don't have much time together. So maybe it's something that brings you, like, maybe it kind of acts like those flowers act as like an in-between lane, like where the sick is kind of death. Maybe these kind of represent like being on death's door. Like maybe it allows you to see the people that you care about most kind of reuniting you temporarily. Maybe it can't be, like, maybe it's something that can't be replicated. Once again, maybe it's something that's only for hybrids. Maybe humans could have the same experience. We don't know, because not many humans are going to bother testing it. We do see that Audie at one point ends up taking a sample of the flowers, because it's like, right, like burning them is one thing, but sometimes you got to face things head on, because they probably have to understand these more, because they understand like why it's growing there. Once again, Rainy isn't contagious, yet these flowers are growing, and they're supposed to be a precursor. Maybe there's something else to it. Maybe it's supposed to be a foreshadowing sign of whatever it is that Abbott has planned. Like, I'm assuming it's like the mass extinction of the hybrids, as well as some cure. Like, he does legitimately want a cure for this virus, but I think it is like also a potential mass extinction of hybrids. Well, that's just my current thoughts about it. At least I think surefire about they've said as much about the cure, but whether it's the complete extinction of the hybrids, which I assume, but to be fair, they're also a key piece to this whole thing as well. So we'll ultimately have to wait and see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.